first year of college, I really struggled to balance reading Brandon Sanderson books with finishing my homework. The problem was I needed to do my homework, but all I really wanted to do was read Brandon Sanderson books. I read Way of Kings and Elantris during the semester, right before Thanksgiving, so before finals. But since finals were right around the corner after I finished Elantris, I decided that for the sake of my grades, I needed to wait until winter break to read the Mistborn trilogy. And if you've read the books, then you can imagine that turned out to be a really good decision, especially for my grades, since I think I read the Mistborn series in 3 or 4 days. All I did during that time over winter break was sit and read the series. I didn't know it at the time, but the Mistborn trilogy would fall perfectly within my pattern of which book in a trilogy ends up being my favorite, least favorite, and middle favorite of the books. So what is my order? My order is typically first, then third, then second. Although actually, this particular series didn't fall into that pattern, but that is typically my pattern. Before I go into why, I would love to hear what your order is. What is your favorite in a trilogy usually, or your least favorite, and why? So for me, I typically love the first book in the series. It's where we get to meet the characters. It has the beginning of the character arc for the series, but it always has a pretty strong character arc for the main character. Where the second book typically doesn't have as strong of a character arc because it's focused on the series character arc, but the first book has already wrapped up that the first book character arc. And so then the second book, sometimes they'll still have like a character arc that they're focusing on, or they'll focus on another character to do an arc for. But character arcs are really important to me, and so I typically like that character arc that is really strong in the first book. I also love the way that a lot of series will do the first book as basically its own story, where the second two are typically you have to have read the other ones. So Mistborn is a great example of this, where you could read just the first book and it wraps up in a way that leaves you very satisfied. Obviously there are unanswered questions that get answered throughout the rest of the series, but I feel like the first book, same with Hunger Games. Hunger Games, you could read just the first book and its own little story, and you could come away fairly satisfied, even though it has a little bit of a cliffhanger. Where second books in the series, second books tend to be my least favorite for a couple reasons. One of them is that they are not their own story. They start off where the first book picked up, but they almost always end on a cliffhanger that all is lost, and you can't just stop reading at a second book. Especially if they haven't written the rest of the series yet, then that's super annoying, because then you're waiting on a cliffhanger that you don't know what happens, and cliffhangers are so annoying when the book's not out yet. The other reason that I tend to not like second books as much is because they are kind of the middle of the book where everything starts going wrong. And I know some people love this, some people it's like their favorite thing, but for me, I do not love that. It always feels like kind of a slog to get through, because I'm like, yeah, things are getting worse. Let's, get over it. Also, some book series, and I mean, I don't think Mistborn really fell into this, but some books are just kind of like filler books. Like, oh, we need a middle, so we're gonna like fill up some space with it. I felt this with the Selection series. I also actually kind of felt this with the Hunger Games series. There's just quite a few series where it feels kind of like you could take the book out and put a few key things in the first or third book, and you could just take the whole second book out and it wouldn't matter too much. And so then that's kind of annoying. The reason that I do tend to like third books, and sometimes this makes the third book actually my favorite, is because it is where they wrap up the character arc. And sometimes that is just so satisfying. Like, the first Mistborn book is my favorite overall, but the ending of the third book is probably my favorite ending of any book almost ever, because the character arc is complete and it's so good, but also it's like this really cool twist that ties in with the character arc that I did not see coming, and it is so good. And so it is one of my favorite endings, even though the first book of the Mistborn series is my favorite. But like I said before, the third act doesn't usually have as much of a complete character arc. It's the ending of the character arc, which is really satisfying still. But I do really like how in the first book you get the whole character arc, and that you get to see that journey. That's my favorite part of books usually. Once again, I would love to hear in the comments below what your favorite order is for a trilogy typically, and if there are exceptions to that. And if you like this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe for lots of reading and writing content. If you want to follow my reading journey, you can go over to Goodreads. I do leave a review for every book I read there. You can also check out my Instagram where I share my favorite books and also my writing journey. And thank you so much for watching my video. I will see you in the next one.